Another public health emergency has been playing out in upstate New York. An industrial chemical linked to a host of health issues, including cancer, contaminated a small town's water supply. Residents now fear that the water they've been using to wash their dishes, bathe in, and drink for decades is making them sick. Paul Beeben's here with that. Paul?
Yeah, this is a tough story, John. The town's called Hoosick Falls. It's about 3 hours up the Hudson Valley from New York City. And this town has been in crisis mode since late last year. But this problem actually goes back decades, and it's going to take years to fix. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has declared the town's water clean now, thanks to a new temporary filtration system. And he also says progress toward a long-term fix is being made. But some residents there are simply not buying it. They say it's too little, too late.
It was a quiet little town, lots of green space. There was ball fields and places for the kids to play. It seemed safe, and everything changed in one day.
For months now, Michelle Baker and everyone else in Hoosick Falls have been on an emotional roller coaster ever since they learned that the water in their quaint riverside village is contaminated with a toxic chemical.
The simple thing of going to the faucet and getting a glass of water when you're thirsty, you can't do that anymore.
The reason they can't is because perfluorooctanoic acid, or PFOA, a chemical used to make Teflon and other plastics, was found in the town's water. It's been linked to cancer, thyroid disease, complications during pregnancy, and other serious health problems. Hoosick Falls factories used PFOA to make Teflon for more than 70 years, starting back in the 1940s.
This is the town waterworks. This is the water source here, the baseball fields, basically.
Yeah,
Michael Hickey's father, John, worked in Hoosick Falls factories for 32 years. After he died of kidney cancer in 2013, Hickey made it his mission to find out why his father and so many other people in his hometown seemed to be getting sick.
You know, there's always been kind of a thought in our village that we seem to have a high rate of cancer.
Hickey started researching cancer and Teflon, a trail that led straight to PFOA. So in the summer of 2014, he took water samples from his house, his mother's house, 2 local businesses, and used his own money to have them tested.
They came back a few weeks later, and sure enough, they were positive for PFOA.
All 4 of them?
All 4 of them were positive, but the only ones, the 2 that were over the EPA level was my house and my mother's house.
Whether it be thyroid cancer, pancreatic cancer, renal cancer, it's just the fact that you were seeing a lot of it, you know, and probably more so it would seem than you were seeing in other places.
Dr. Marcus Martinez is the family doctor for many of the village's 3,500 residents, including Michael Hickey. Martinez is 44 years old and is himself in remission from a very rare and aggressive form of lung cancer.
Are you convinced that PFOA caused your cancer?
I mean, could I prove it? You know, 100% no. Clinically, yeah. I think it has a lot to do with my cancer.
So here you can see what may have caused the problems here in Hoosick Falls. That big green pipe sticking out of the ground back there, that is a wellhead for Hoosick Falls water. And those white buildings through the trees back there, just a few hundred yards away, that is a plastics plant that has been making Teflon and using PFOA for decades.
After Hickey got his test results back in the summer of 2014, he and Dr. Martinez started pushing officials to tell people not to drink the tap water. They also wanted a full investigation, and they wanted the water cleaned up. But they say the response was slow. In January 2015, New York's Department of Health told the town the water did not constitute an immediate health hazard. Last summer, the EPA says testing of the groundwater under the plant turned up more PFOA, including a sample 45 times higher than levels recommended by the federal government. Hickey and Martinez turned to environmental lawyer David Engel for help.
I've been doing environmental work for close to 40 years now, and I've handled major environmental contamination cases all over New York and elsewhere. This is one of the most serious situations I've ever seen.
Engel reached out to the Environmental Protection Agency's regional office, and in late November, the EPA said residents should stop drinking and cooking with the water.
To restore the public's confidence in Hoosick Falls.
In late January, New York State classified PFOA as a hazardous substance and freed up state Superfund money to help pay for an investigation, cleanup, and the temporary filtration system. And in February, a federal class action lawsuit was launched against St. Gobain Performance Plastics and Honeywell International, the current and former owners of the plant.
No manufacturing plant should be using the environment as its disposal facility.
Robin Greenwald represents the plaintiffs.
It's always dollars over the environment, right? If you take your chemical and you dispose of it in a proper way, it costs money, it's expensive. It has to be sent to a hazardous waste facility, that costs money. If you put it down the drain, it costs nothing.
These plants, never any Teflon used there.
Engineer David Hassel worked in several of Hoosick Falls plastics factories over the years. He says he designed the stacks at the plant many in town believe is one of the sources of the PFOA. The stacks bake the Teflon using PFOA and other agents and then vent into the air.
As an engineer building that tower, I had any number of things I could have done to catch the stuff and dispose of it if we had been told that it was toxic and we shouldn't be putting it into the air. I mean, it wouldn't have been a big deal.
Instead, Hassel explained, parts of the stacks were cleaned in the backyard.
Every Monday morning, they would take the ductwork apart and take it down and wash it next to the plant and let whatever was coming off of it just go right into the ground.
St. Gobain became the fifth owner of this plant when it bought it in 1996. The company says it doesn't know how PFOA got into the village's water supply. It's been paying for bottled water since November and has agreed to pay for a permanent fix.
We'll make right for the people of Hoosick Falls.
When we asked St. Gobain how the company handled PFOA, the company said in a statement, St. Gobain complies with all applicable laws and industry best practices when it comes to waste management of its raw materials. We do not have knowledge about the procedures and policies of any of the companies that preceded us at the Hoosick Falls locations.
Flushing, is that going to be adequate?
At this recent town meeting, people in Hoosick Falls were skeptical of the official line that the problem is being fixed. Many think the damage has been done. Residents say banks have stopped approving mortgages and that their property values have plummeted. Meanwhile, fear and uncertainty have spiked.
Will people be willing to still move to Hoosick Falls even with a clean water supply? Or are we going to be labeled with a stigma for the next 15, 20 years that's really going to kill our community as a whole? I hope not.
So the village water is now being filtered, and officials say the system's been completely flushed out and the water is safe to drink. They're also putting filters on private wells, but long-term the problem is not solved. These filters are temporary. The PFOA is still in the groundwater, so long-term, John, they've got to find a new source of clean water that could take months or even years and cost millions of dollars.
We've been reporting on this story for months and months and months. So what happens to these people now?
Well, it's a long process. So the state says they're going to refund their water bills for the last 6 months since they acknowledged officially that the PFOA was there. There's the class action lawsuit underway. There's an investigation, but all these things are going to take time. Meanwhile, again, people just say, look, we've been drinking this stuff for years. We're terrified about the future. We want long-term health monitoring, but nothing's ever going to ease their minds about what they've been through.
And the company, St. Gobain, says they're going to make this right. But they're still making Teflon at Hoosick Falls?
They're still making Teflon. Now, they've replaced PFOA with a new chemical. PFOA was known as C8. This new chemical is known as C6. It's a different chemical, different molecular structure, but here's what's the same about it. We don't know very much about it, what its long-term effects are, and it's largely unregulated. There are thousands and thousands of chemicals just like this being used all across the country every day.
All right, Paul, thanks very much.